Hello GDQ staff, I am the real Vincentio, and this is my submission for a story about my uncle to the Summer Games Done Quick event. This game has not been run at any GDQ before, but it has been run at a couple of smaller speedrunning marathons, and I would be very excited to be the first person to run it at a GDQ. I have been running this game since 2014, started around September of that year. I believe towards the end of the year I ended in 3rd place, and since then I've been running the game pretty consistently about 3 months out of the year in the breaks between college and while I have some downtime, and I'm currently the world record holder for the category I'm going to show today, that is any % no fling. I'm looking to run this with a 35-minute estimate. The reason I'm choosing this category for the game over the regular any % and the bind fling runs are that the movement options in those games can be sort of inconsistent, and even if I were to give myself a fairly lengthy estimate, my time could end up being extremely short and say 20 minutes under estimate with a 40-minute estimate, or an hour with a 40-minute estimate. So the no fling run has the most consistent time frame for what I'm looking at. So let's get started. What we're starting with here is the workshop. Timing doesn't actually start until I move. Gaining control doesn't actually start the game in motion at all. I could still look around and my time would be the same. So as soon as I put a movement input in, that's when I'm going to start the timer. Traditionally in runs of this game, we actually don't play this level, since going through it, the whole level is on a global timer, and no matter what speed you actually complete it at, you will start the playable section of the game, not to say that this isn't playable, but with unique timing, I guess, you'll start that at the same time, no matter what. So what we do is we take the time it takes to complete this level and simply add it on to the very first, I say more active level, I guess, which is Sanctuary. So what the whole, I guess I'll start with the story of the game. You are telling a bedtime story to your daughter, as you might be able to see or read here, and it's a recollection of you as a child going on this adventure to find your uncle. When we get into the more playable levels, there's a lot of cool movement options we're going to be using. I'll try and explain some of the most basic ones here. We have the WASD, just walking around like we're doing. If I'm holding shift while I'm doing that, I'll go into a little bit of a sprinting animation, which is a bit faster. We are going to be able to have these powered jumps, which can be achieved by holding right click and then releasing it. There's 2 forms of those. I could do a straight vertical jump, or if I'm holding shift in a direction, I will do a long jump. And those are going to be the movement options at the beginning. As we get towards more gameplay and we get access to the other movement options, I'll explain them a bit better, or a bit more in depth. Alright, so as we're loading into the level, I'll very briefly go over what I'm going to do at the start here, which is, as soon as I gain control, I'm going to start charging up and using the aforementioned long jumps to try and just move across the shortest path to get towards the first crystal. Most of what I would call skips in this game are really just us moving across the shortest path, mostly due to things like kind of hard to explain, I guess. When we have the grapple device, it'll make a lot more sense. This intro here is mostly just running and jumping and getting to that crystal as fast as possible. So right down here is the first crystal, and that's going to give us access to the main form of movement in this game, which is the grapple device. As you can see, when I have a grapple available and I'm pointing at something I can grapple, the reticle will light up, and that means that I can grapple towards it. Currently I only have 1, and so I have to land to reset my grapple amounts every time. This is pretty much what we're going to be using for most of the game, and collecting up to 3 crystals. With the grapple device, there's a little bit of oddities with it. For starters here, you're able to grab outside of the lighted range of your reticle. So there's a couple of times where you may see me grip onto something before looks like I'm able to, but that's sort of the way the game is. Right here, I'm taking a path what we consider out of bounds, but isn't truly outside the bounds of the level, to skip some rock cycles and get up to this platform here. We do a lot of things like that where it's either faster to skip cycles by taking a shorter path, or by going what we consider out of bounds, even though it's just a sort of a side path. Right here, we're coming up onto the second grapple. Of course, when you have two grapples, I'll be able to grapple twice in the air before I have to reset by touching the ground. This allows us, obviously, to move past obstacles that we wouldn't be able to before. And right here, I'm going to try and show off one of the other forms of movement you can get with the grapple device, which is called an edge boost. So I believe I got it here by clipping slightly into geometry. As you move past it with the grapple, you're able to gain a lot of speed, and thus skip cycles, and in some cases get further than you normally would be able to. For the rest of the level here, I'm pretty much going to be following the intended route. There isn't very much else to say that's tricky. Just again, most of what I'm trying to do is take the shortest pass from place A to place B. A lot of the times I'm going to be trying to edge boost so that I can do that quickly, but for the most part, it's just going to be hopefully fast. I will be trying to edge boost a lot, as that saves time since, you know, going faster, but a lot of those can be slightly risky, and it's better to just get through it in this case than try and do the fastest strats. So here at the village is going to start out with an in-game cutscene. This is a good place for donations. There's not very much going on. It starts with this walking section, and then we're going to introduce one of the main characters into the story. What I'm going to take the time to do right now is sort of explain the route that I'm going to do. In Marathon,
Hello.
I'd probably just be shutting up and letting donations talk.
Here.
So
Wow.
I'm standing on Maddie's head right now, trying to get a little bit of a better view. I'm going to
with
try
red
and
hair
edge
on
boost
your
from a
face.
rock here, get down to this platform. Right there is actually the start of a cutscene. I'm going to try and go over it to skip that cutscene, and then grapple through the village
What's
here
that
over
uncle?
to where this red windmill is. Then jump on some floating rocks, which is all the rocks in this
Really?
game, I
Me
guess.
too. I'll help you
Land
find him.
on a little
Hi,
rock in
Madeline.
there to reset my
The others
grapples,
call me
grab this second
Maddie
floating
Madeline.
rock, and move down
Sometimes.
towards a cave here, which
I
has
don't
the
know why,
third
really.
grapple.
But you can call me Madeline.
Um,
You've never been to the village, right?
that's pretty much it. From
Let's
there, with
meet
the
over
third
there in the
grapple, I'll
square.
just
I'll show
continue
you
out
around.
through the level towards
I
the
bet
very
you can get
end.
there easily with your
Village
shoes.
is one of the shortest levels
So,
in pretty
I'll
much
see you
every
there.
category, and let's get started with it. Edge boosts are very important to the start of this level, but not required. Right there, I tried to do a more risky edge boost and missed it, so I'm going to go for a less risky one here.
How is that possible?
Alright, just have to get across that big gap. There we go, skipping this first cutscene. And now I'm going to grapple throughout this village. There's a lot of storytelling that's being done in this village. A lot of it is visual storytelling. There's a lot of asides where you tell stories about your uncle to your daughter. Very good, but of course not our concern right now. Alright, so that jump I did off of the center rock there allowed me to reset my grapple amounts. That way I don't have to fly over to that platform. I can just release from here with my extra grapple and get towards this cutscene that I'm going to be skipping. So right here is a very big, very important to the plot cutscene that we're going to go completely around to grab that crystal, and then quick reset out of there. Quick resetting in this game does keep your grapple amounts, especially when you get, which is important for that skip because you can get that crystal without having to listen to the whole cutscene. This is another case where you can grapple a little bit further than it looks like you can, and we do that to skip a couple of rocks here and go around this whole thing. then most of the rest of this is an intended route. I am going to try and do a cycleless skip down here at the end, unless it looks like I'm on a very good cycle, in which case I'll just grab whatever rock is there. I didn't set up the edge boost for it very well, so I'm just going to be on cycle, and we'll head towards the end. The cycleless skip involves edge boosting off of that first rock, grabbing off of that big rock in the middle, and getting close enough to grab that rock that I just grappled. Oh, I missed the ending explaining it, so we may as well try it. Get an edge boost here. Edge boost off of here. And grab that rock. And we should have enough speed. No, I don't. Alright. That's what it looks like. Like I said, most of what I'm going to be trying to do is attempting one very risky or difficult strat, and then immediately going to backups. In this case, I've had to try it 3 times since I got distracted trying to explain what I was doing. Alright. So that's the end of Village, and we're going to head on to Chasms here. Before I do that, though, I am going to boost up the Gamma really quick. Chasms is a very dark level, and it becomes incredibly difficult to see what's going on if I leave the Gamma down where I have it. I will probably be doing that in the marathon unless somebody would like to arrange for a filter to be turned on while I'm in this level. It just makes it a lot easier for enjoyment because you can see what's happening. Right here, what I just did was, I don't know, mostly try and take the shortest path along the edges here, and that's pretty much the game plan for most of the level. Edge boosting is very important to traversing this level quickly, as what we're going to be doing is moving along walls most of the time to try and get towards the end of the level. It's supposed to be a very long crisscrossy path, but since we're just going to be traveling throughout this main cavern and hopefully edge boosting everywhere, we can do it in a lot less time. So you can see that I'm trying to edge boost off of these walls here to get a lot of distance. I've missed a few of them, but it does help you get to where you're going faster. Right. Most of the intended paths in this game have you walking around a lot of crisscrossing, going like left to right, to try and, I guess, pad time into the actual size of the level. But this does because of that design, it does allow us to sort of just skip over everything. Like in this case where I'm moving across the ceiling, I've skipped this huge maze below us that you're normally not able to see, have to like walk along very carefully. Right here with this edge boost, I'm going to be moving to the farthest platform that I can get to without the eye waking up here. The actual trigger for this is well behind us. And by getting it all the way up here, we're able to move immediately after the eye goes to sleep. Normally when this next line of dialogue is playing, you would not be able to move. And with that, we're able to get to the very end of the level here before that dialogue stops. And after that, it'll play the very ending level dialogue, and we'll be through. I would very quickly here like to show off flings, which are a form of movement that we're not using. I did a very small one there, but they're mostly done by clipping into either solid rock or these like mushrooms. I didn't get it in time, but they throw you across the map at very high speeds. I'm going to turn the gamma back down a little bit here, so it's not as jarring, and I will bump it up again for the very last level, as that also has some dark sections that you can't see as well. Starhaven here is by far the riskiest level. There's a lot of potential to have big resets in your normal runs, since you skip a lot of cuts or a lot of checkpoints trying to go quickly. I have 1 or 2 backup checkpoints that I'll be hitting, and other than that, I'm just going to try and get through the level. Because these trees here have very odd hitboxes, we are able to edge boost off of them and get a lot of distance. I haven't been able to do it too consistently, but I'll point it out when I do. Other than that, again, most of what we're trying to do is just take the shortest path from one place to another, and a lot of the times that just involves going on the inside of curves and leaping to places you wouldn't expect to be able to leap to. That was a small edge boost off of there. Coming up here, I'm going to hit my first safety save, or safety checkpoint. Okay. Alright.
The legends were true.
One of the big things in this level are these large fans that you grapple onto and as they pull you towards the next place. What I'm actually going to be doing here, and on pretty much every fan, is landing onto the fan blade to reset my grapples. That way I'm able to get to the next section without having to land in between. This does save a little bit of time, but is generally considered very risky, and that's why I'm taking those backup strats, or backup checkpoints. Right here is a spot, this is called Maddie's Challenge. This is something I would like to have as a donation incentive. She has us traverse it without the use of our grapple device, just those jumps that I mentioned beforehand. It's just a fun challenge. Right here, past these two fans, we are coming up on our last form of movement. It's called the rocket boots. I take this time to explain a couple of things with the rocket boots. The first thing is that we're running the game in 31 FPS because the boots inherently are better at odd-numbered frame rates. The best would be 11, but the game becomes way too unplayable. But at 31, it's the pretty much the perfect mix of playable FPS and distance from the boots. Very oddly, both numbers in the FPS do have to be odd. At 41, the boots still act like normal. And at a number, say, like 55, the boots do go a little bit longer, but it's not enough to get the skips that we need from them. You are able to complete the game, obviously, without the use of this setup, the 31 frames boots, but it does allow us to skip a couple of sections and greatly reduces the time of the run. Right here's another place after this cave where we're going to be just trying to take the shortest path with these boots. Instead of going around and up this island here, we're going to land to reset the boots, jump, use the boots, and grapple over to this tower. And right here I'm going to land on these fan blades again to reset my grapples. This will allow me to have one extra grapple at the very end of this section of three fans, and my boots. That way I can shave off a lot of distance without having to land on one of these closer platforms. So I didn't get a very good edge boost, but instead of having to land here like I normally would with the boots, I can use the boots to head over this way, grapple onto this rock, and get further through the section. Right here I'm going to skip a fairly large cutscene by flying over the trigger. This is possible because of the new boots. Before we would have to land in between those two piers at the bottom of the screen, and after that, while you were respawning before you hit the ground, you'd have to use the boots again to fly over the small village there. In this part again, it's just about taking the path with the least distance, so I'm going to grapple twice, use my boots to kind of cut across this curve, just head towards the end of the level again. Alright. Right here, I'm about to do a fairly new trick with the fan blades. Normally you would have to go from one fan to the next, using your boots to cover that distance. But I recently figured out that if you perform an edge boost off of that crystal in the fan, you can then use your boots to get all the way over to this island at the very end, skipping that second fan there. Alright. So we're at the very end of the level here. There's going to be another cutscene that takes about minute 50. During that time I'm going to give a very brief overview of the plot, as there's not really any strats or anything I can explain. You just kind of have to wait it out. So Maddie, who's been on our back since the chasms actually, we've taken her to this village that they were talking about, Starhaven, where she met a bunch of other frog people that were allowed to use crystals, as she, if we looked at the cutscenes in the village, was told not to and wasn't allowed to be creative. So she wants to be with these people, like flourish creatively, become an engineer, do cool things. And that's pretty much the plot. She decides to stay behind with them while we go on to see our uncle.
I don't know what I want from us.
I told Madeline that I would accept whatever choice she made.
This is also another place where donations could be read. It's, minute 50 that really isn't much going on during.
Maybe I was just looking for a way out, somewhere to be free. And I know that if anyone can find Fred, it's you. If you meet him, when you meet him, tell him to come see me, okay?
I promised.
Thank you. I'm glad I met you. And it won't be the same without you around. Goodbye, friend.
I said goodbye to Maddie, and I had a feeling that this was the last time I'd see her. But even in this sad moment, I was happy for her. She had found a place where she belonged.
We've been trying very hard to find a skip to this cutscene, but seeing as it triggers the end of the level, there just really isn't a way you can. Here I'm falling off the boat to reset back onto that island. Just a sort of fun thing you can do at the end of the level here. Watch Maddie waving to you, but you're right here. Hi. So at the start of this Ice Caves level here, I'm going to do a fairly difficult edge boost, and then grab a rock that we aren't supposed to be able to grab yet. And, ooh, I didn't hit that at a good angle. There's this cave off to the right here that we're supposed to traverse through, solve a puzzle, and that will make all the ice fall off of these rocks. That way we'd be able to grapple them. But as it turns out, you can grapple them with the ice on and just continue on in the level. What I grabbed right there is a bunch of crystals, which, when grappling it, will reset your grapples, but not your boots. That's a new thing in this level, and we'll be using it plenty of times to just keep grappling without having to land. Right here, I'm going to land in the edge to reset my boots. That way I'm able to get over to this rock and climb this tower in a very efficient manner as opposed to winding my way up it. Just going to jump, use the boots, grapple on, and land on this rock again. Well, different rock this time. Jump, use the boots, and continue on my way. I'm pretty much just trying to climb that tower as fast as possible. The intended route is very slow and, like I said, does wind its way up. Alright, through this cave here, we're going to set off to our first major skip in the level. Well, I guess it's not as big as skipping that whole room with the floating rock. Anyway, not as big as the first skip, I guess. But we're going to head over here to this platform so we can jump and move along this left wall here. The intended route has us go all the way around there. We don't really want to do that. By coming this way, we're also very easily able to skip a section where our rocket boots are supposed to break, and that allows us to have them in a room where we shouldn't. So, right here, when you come down those rocks and you land on this platform to the left, your rocket boots are supposed to break, you're unable to use them, and you have grapples only. But, of course, this is not the case for us, and in this next tower climb here, we'll be able to use the boots to clear it very quickly. So right here, just head up, do that again. I'm going to do that a couple more times to just get through this tower. Now, at the very end here, we're coming up to a very short cutscene where you're supposed to fix your boots. Oops. Instead, what I'm going to do is jump and then use the rocket boots to fly through that cutscene. That way I don't have to walk. Here I fix my boots, even though they weren't really broken, And we're able to continue on.
The smell of the aftershave he always used.
Right here again, we're going to skip a lot of the intended route. They want you to go around, up, and fall down onto those top platforms there. I kind of misjudged where I was, so I had to shoot myself very high as not to overshoot this platform. Anyway, what we're going to do is jump, use the boots, and there's a very small triangle of geometry here where we're able to stand and regain our grapple again. Then I can jump off, grapple onto that rock, and use our boots to get us back onto the intended path. The skip that I did right there is actually a more advanced version of that skip. The rock I grappled onto actually has a standable platform, and if you don't get a very good jump coming off of that very small triangle, you are able to use your boots to go over and stand on that platform to reset them and get back onto the intended route. What I did just there was boots up onto another platform to skip a very large section of gameplay. I'll try and check it out behind us right here. Go around through this long cave, but we don't really want to do that. And right here we're approaching the end of the level, so this is a very long section where we're going to use those crystals again to reset our grapples and try and get through this as fast as possible. In a normal run I might try and attempt a few edge boosts here, but because this is for a marathon setting and sometimes when you try an edge boost you just fall to the ground immediately, I'm going to avoid doing them. This is another section similar to that, only in this case the crystals are on this ceiling here as we try and just grapple towards the very end of the level. There's a whale. Look at that. It's crazy. Anyway, just moseying along, trying to get to the end here. Okay, at this very end section here, I'm going to attempt to do something very similar to what I did with the place where you could fix the boots. Going to jump and then use the rocket boots to boost through this section, avoiding walking up very slowly, as I'm capped to this walking speed once I lose control. This is another in-game cutscene. This one's about 2.5 or almost 3 minutes, 2 minutes 50 seconds there around. At this point, like, not very much to say. It'd be a good point for donations. I'm just sort of walking around trying to kill time. You do find your uncle, and as we're going to go over, he has only one path back and decides to send you while he stays with Maddie and helps out all the frogs. I don't exactly have the strongest grasp of the story of this game. I actually picked it up to start speedrunning it exclusively. It was the first game I ever started speedrunning, and it wasn't until this past year that I actually took the time to go through and play it casually, and I was honestly very amazed at how good of a game it was casually. The storytelling as you interact with stuff and regale your daughter with, you know, stories of your adventures with your uncle, the visual storytelling just with all of the items and stuff that are scattered around the village and Starhaven and that show evidence of Fred helping out the people, really give you this, build this nice and unique world that is fun to explore.
I'm not going home.
But right now we're just trying to kill time and get to the end.
They need me. And it's just as well. I don't trust this pad for more than one ride anyway. You need that ride.
I didn't want to go home, and I asked if I could stay with him and Maddie instead.
I'm sorry, nephew. As much as I enjoy having you here, you must go home. Explore the world on your own. Have your own adventures.
I reluctantly agreed to go home. I was going to miss my uncle.
I will miss you too.
Alright.
But I'm sure you'll
Just coming up at the very last section here.
Don't worry about me.
As soon as he presses that button, I'm going to start holding escape to try and skip through the credits as fast as possible and get on to the last playable section, the epilogue. So, holding down the escape key. We're on our way through. So the epilogue, while playable here, is not necessarily that interesting.
Wait, Dad. Does that mean
It's just the
Fred's
last
still
playable
dead?
section, and there is one skip that we can do, so we still time it.
Don't you miss him?
It's essentially, for the marathon, just a little bit more time to do donations, or for us as the runners to maybe advertise the game to try and incentivize a few more people to run it.
Today, I stepped into the lobby of the
Other than
house
that,
for the
you're
last
just forced
time.
to walk slowly
My daughter
as
asked me to tell her
the main
about
character
the
here
adventure.
reads off his last words to his uncle.
Your house looks just like my mother and I left it years ago. After you'd gone, I was sure she was going to
Anyway,
throw out
in summation, a story about my uncle is
what
a,
she just cleaned up.
you know,
We made
well,
the
you've seen it
small
at this
memorial
point, so you've made your
for a while.
judgments, but
I
it's a
came
nice
every
little
day,
game.
just
I
like
feel
I
like
used
it's
to.
something that is easy to understand whether or not you like have a good grasp of what the advanced strats are. Right there, I did the last skip walking over that trash can. And
I never told my mother
even if
about
you've
that
never
day.
speedrun a game before,
I
it's
don't
easy
think
to
she would
pick up
believe
and
me,
do, and
but I
so
believe it.
hoping that it's a
After
game that
all
could
these
bring more
years.
people to the speedrunning community while also providing an interesting experience at a GDQ event. So I'm finished here with a time of 29:41. This is well under estimate, but I'm firm with my 35 minutes says, well, I didn't make that many mistakes this time. There are a few sort of catastrophic mistakes I could make. If I miss a cutscene skip, I have to exit to the menu, which eats up a bunch of time. Or if I were to
I have found
fall
that
off
the
in
greater
Starhaven or in Chasms, I can either be reset extremely far back, or in Chasms with the worm, I again have to exit to menu and pretty much rerun the whole level. So while I don't necessarily expect that to happen, the 35 minutes is just in case one of those things does. Thank you so much for watching.